advent of the gender identity ideology. I want to just give you an overview of what's happening over here. Over here, even though self-ID hasn't been written into law, there are a lot of people that are moving high courts demanding that the men who identify as female have F written on their passports with absolutely no change in their body, which means they will continue to have their male anatomy, and yet in their government documentation it will contain female under the sex category. And there is also a lot of problems in India with regards to the usage of the word sex and gender. We do not have separate distinct words to mean sex and gender. Therefore it creates a lot of problems, because people often use it interchangeably. Like if I say my gender is female, and if I now identify as male, that automatically becomes that my sex is also male. Therefore they start using that in all the government documents and everything. So it is a very, very precarious situation for women's rights in India with regards to transgenderism. What's going on in Japan? Can you talk about that?
The women's liberation movement in Japan worked to overcome the culture of inequality, and these women gained certain rights. At least until the early 1990s, it was an activity to overcome the disadvantage of being a woman, to seek equality between men and women, to win legal equality in employment, to appeal for the right not to have one's body violated, and to regain the power to live by affirming themselves. But now, in the world of Japanese academia, feminism has been swallowed up by postmodernism and queer studies. Unfortunately, it is no longer a discipline that protects women's rights. In the mid-1990s, there was the aforementioned conservative bashing of sex education, which became a widespread bashing of feminism itself. As a result, feminism in Japan as an academic discipline, which was still in its infancy, got completely shrink. They felt that they had to protect each other so as not to hurt the feelings of their fellow feminist scholars, and a culture of mutual non-criticism was born. In 1999, a Japanese translation of Judith Butler's Gender Trouble was published. Butler's pedantic and abstract queer studies became popular and among the Japanese academics, making her the sole authority in a culture of non-mutual criticism of feminism scholars. The publishing worlds across the academia followed suit. As I have mentioned so far, in a society that has a strong tendency toward male chauvinism and where women are highly objectified, any self-respecting woman will strongly feel that she does not want to be trapped in the gender role of a woman. This feeling is natural as human beings, but in extreme cases, it can lead to misogyny, looking down on and shunning ordinary general women. This misogynistic tendency became intensified among highly educated women who were interested in gender studies. They became more sympathetic toward trans women who they think have bravely stepped out of the male gender role than toward biological women in general. This academic sympathy and misogyny then seeps through to the students who have similar inclination, and young students become more convinced of their ideas by taking in queer favoring popular culture. Another force that plays a certain central role in transgenderism in Japan is the liberal male gay activist, as in the case in other countries. This includes gay studies and gender studies scholars in academia. The rising of transgenderism has led those gay activists to take a position on the cause of for the sake of vulnerable trans women who were unfairly excluded from the category of women. As a result, it has been the leftist gay activists who have been the most aggressive toward women who oppose transgenderism on the internet. Even outside of academia, women lawyers, women human rights activists, and most of the opposition women politicians who have made reasonable contribution to the defense of women's rights are now either supporting transgenderism in the name of defending LGBT rights or remain silent for fear of being denounced. Rather, researchers who have nothing to do with gender studies, such as researchers in other humanities and natural sciences, have questioned transgenderism based on a certain amount of social common sense and natural science knowledge.
You gave us a sense of what the laws are like, but what is the one thing that you are worried about with regards to transgenderism impacting women's rights?
Many women fear that spaces that were supposed to be separated by biological sex might no longer be so and will induce crime. Well, what will happen to bathhouses and hot springs in Japan? What happened in the We Spa in Los Angeles, where a person with a male body, including male genitalia, could not be refused to enter a women's bathhouse if he was legally considered a woman. It's something that could happen in Japan if the laws stipulate that there should be no discrimination based on gender identity. It is part of Japanese culture to enjoy hot springs or bath without any clothes, so it is essential to have separate areas, basically according to biological sex. What happened in We Spa may be repeated in hot springs and public baths all over Japan. What will happen to toilet? In Japan, until 20 or 30 years ago, there was no separation between men and women in many toilets. There was no end to the peeping and molesting behavior of men. It was difficult for women to feel safe and relaxed when going out. What is likely to happen in the future is that, step 1, men-only, women-only toilet will be gradually decreased and toilet for both men and women use will increase. Step 2, new law will be stipulated that there should be no discrimination based on gender identity. Step 3, then women-only toilet will become accessible for men that self-identifying as women. Gender identity cannot be seen from the outside. As I mentioned, women and children are not protected in Japanese culture, where there are many men who try to molest women whenever they get a chance, and men who selfishly consume women as sexual objects. There are already cases that women-only spaces is no longer allowed. In one case, a lesbian bar was accused of discrimination against transgender women for holding a cis-only event. In the field of sports, transgenderism is less pronounced, but a booklet published by prestigious Japan Sports Association recommends giving preference to gender identity over sex. Also, many mainstream prominent newspapers wrote positively about Laurel Hubbard, that transgender women weightlifter at Tokyo Olympics. A recent surprising news was that there is a move by railroad companies to eliminate women-only carriages and make them carriage for everyone, as a way to accommodate those who are concerned about their gender identity. In a society where perverts are rampant and women cannot use public transportation with peace of mind, women-only carriages are essential. Women-only carriages are what we finally acquire after a long period of women's activism. However, it is about to be taken away. Although this news is still just an online news story and not an official announcement by a railroad company, women are speaking out to prevent this from happening in real life. However, many well-known feminists in the gender studies have remained silent so far. They are not trying to protect women at all.